Hello and welcome to the 2021 Virtual Black History Month program, sponsored by the James Clemens Youth Advocates for Equality and Black Student Union. Today's program centers on the appreciation and advancement of Black culture through various avenues. We spoke to local Black activists, entrepreneurs, and more to find out how they're advancing our culture and how we can as well. But first, we have Laila Perkins with the Black National Anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let all rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you, Laila, for that wonderful presentation of a cultural staple. Next up, we have Lundy, an activist and artist, interviewed by Haripriya Mantraratnam.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lundy. I am a 19-year-old first-year student at Spelman College studying political activism with a minor so far in food studies. I am from Edgewater, New Jersey, by way of Madison, Alabama, and a graduate of Bob Jones High School. Go Patriots. So you can see I wore my merch today. I am an activist, a musician, just an enjoyer of culture, specifically Black culture, and specifically here on this planet to advance Black lives. So that is why I'm in school at Spelman studying pre-law. And I'm excited about that. And my goal after I get out of college is to work on some community gardens across the South in rural Black communities because I am very passionate about the health of Black people, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, just like holistic health. I'm really interested in. So that's my goal after this. And I think that my work with the organizations that I've worked with that we'll talk about later on has really made it clear to me that there's a need for direct action for people of color to be passionate about the things that they love in their communities and take action with that passion. So, yeah.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about how, what kind of groups that you worked with? Obviously, we'll go into specifics a little bit later, but just overall.
Sure, yeah. So primarily my work has been with the High School Democrats of America. I came into political work volunteering for Doug Jones in 2017. Quincy, fact check me. But I was working with Ariana Smart, who came to be the vice chairwoman of HSDA. I want to say my junior year. And I continued to work on that campaign, and then I started working on more local campaigns, and I realized it would be in my best interest to join an organization. So I joined HSDA at Bob Jones, and after that, the floodgates kind of just opened. Shortly, so Doug Jones was elected, and then a couple of months later, Valentine's Day, the Parkland shooting happens. And a couple of weeks later, Ariana gives me a call and she's like, love, I'm really just sick about everything that's going on in Florida. And I don't know what, I do know what we should do. And I want you to help me. It wasn't I don't know what we should do. And so we got a couple of people together and we got bagels, and there was one adult involved, and she was like, I'm going to be the only adult involved. You guys are going to be the lead on this. I guess I was like 16 at the time, I just got my first car. So I was like, wow, I'm an adult. But I was like really a baby, like a deer in heels, like stumbling, like just pushed into this wonderful, creative, intelligent environment of students who wanted to work on having this march. So that's how I got involved with March for Our Lives. We had the march in Huntsville, the end of April that year. And I later went down to Birmingham to work on help other students, March for Our Lives students from Birmingham, introduce and greet students from Parkland. They were going on tour that summer. So I was involved with that. And at that point, I was about to be a junior in high school. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks before school started, probably 2 weeks. And they asked me to come on tour with them. So I was on tour with, half of the group, the main people from March for Our Lives for 5 days maybe. But it was like the best 5 days of my life. And it was a really just great and immersive experience. I really got to know some of the people, and I got to see the ins and outs of an organization in a way that it was not possible otherwise. So then I went to HSDA Summit, and at Summit you just meet a bunch of people who have worked on a bunch of different organizations. That's how I learned about Sunrise. Isra Hersey. Oh my God, I'm so bad at pronouncing her last name. I'm so sorry. And I know her, so she's probably gonna kill me if she ever sees this. She won't. But so Isra was working with Sunrise. She was like a really big name in Sunrise, and I got to meet her through HSDA. But that was great. Jeremy Ornstein, who is still really big at Sunrise, was the chair of HSDA. And so that's how I got into Sunrise as well, Sunrise Movement. What else? What other organizations?
I think those are the three that you kind of mentioned when we talked before. And
I planned a march with Alabama Youth Climate Strike. So that was with Isabel Hope, another activist I want to mention. She's great. She's from.
Did she do Alabama on Fire?
Potentially, she's done literally everything, so I wouldn't even know. But she's done Meddling Kids movement and some other journalism work in Alabama. She's just great. I love her. Really great writer and great activist. So that's kind of the organizations that I've worked on. I've kind of just floated around and done different things. I've also worked with the Young Democrats of Alabama. but that's not notable. So.
Yeah, so that all sounds really cool. So those are some groups that, the people watching this, if they want to get more politically active or socially involved, they can join those. So I guess we can shift into the question and answer kind of segment now.
Sure.
So can you discuss the importance of Black women as leaders, such as like through HSDA, like you mentioned before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that being at an institution like Spelman has definitely shown me the importance of Black women as leaders and people who are like you as leaders, like in the communities that you're in. It just provides a different type of peace to know that someone understands, what you may have experienced. I've been reading Sisters of the Yam by Bell Hooks. I definitely recommend that for Black women specifically, but really women of color. It discusses, truth as a route to like self-healing. And I think that the importance of Black women as leaders in any like institution is that Black women center healing when they work. It is just so evident when you see it across the board. So I think that, it's important to just like introduce love and patience and kindness into workspaces and institutions. And it's easiest to do that when you know how to operate from that space, like when that's your entire life,
How can students continue being activists during this time, especially from home?
I think that students can definitely just dedicate like some time every week to activism. I know that it's hard to like have a routine, but that is the best way to get through this pandemic that I've found. Having a routine and sticking to that routine. So working activism into your routine for an hour or 2 hours a day is really not that hard, and it's worth it for the impact that it makes on your community, the greater good, etc. My favorite way to get into um, activism from home is wow, why is the word for it escaping me right now?
Home banking? Is that what you're doing?
No,
Petitions?
postcarding.
Okay.
Yeah, I love writing postcards for candidates. I think it's a really personal way to speak to someone. You don't know that person, but you're writing them a handwritten note and you put effort into that for them. So that, and for the candidate. So that's great.
Yeah, and sometimes our elected officials seem very distant, and it's hard to remember. You can just email them and they will reply, So
Right.
Yeah.
And ask them how to get involved,
Yeah, there will be specific things that they need as well. Okay, you said that intersectionality came easily to you and naturally. So when did you begin your activism?
So I started my activism in middle school, I would say. There weren't any Black Lives Matter protests in my area other than in New York, but I was 14 years old, so I wasn't gonna go to the protests, like period. Like my mom just doesn't, at that point, she didn't let me go to anything.
Mm-hmm.
But in my school, there were a bunch of kids who were saying the N-word and just like making insensitive jokes about Black people. And I, made it my business to speak to them every day and say, do you realize what you're saying? Do you understand how harmful this is to my community? And people really seriously hated me for it. I was in New Jersey at this time, so a lot of people think that the North is not racist, but that is a misconception. People can have very deep biases that they just don't even understand. So I would call that activism, you know. I was doing it by myself. Like, there were no other Black kids in the school they were there, but they didn't help me. Like, they didn't want to take the time to tell people, you know, about their business. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's important, and it's like with racial slurs and other slurs as well. Especially when you're young, people easily don't understand that. And that's not an excuse at all. Um, but it's very brave of you to have spoken up like that, especially when no one else was.
Thank you.
How do music and activism go together for you? Because you've said that you're a musician.
Well, I've been trying really hard to write some music that I feel like is a proper addition to the scene. But personally, you know, writing music for me is just resistance because it's me taking care of myself. Self-love and self-care, as mentioned in Bell Hooks' book, is like a form of resistance. So, and a form of activism in my, you know, I think self-care is really a form of activism, personally. Because if you don't take care of it, it's in the book. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to contribute to the activist space that you're in. So
yeah, and like, I guess it's important to take up space. You know, it's like you don't just need the bare necessities. You need happy things. You know, things that maybe aren't necessary, but they're important. Like music is one of those things.
right.
Um, Okay, so what are some specific issues we need to solve in the Madison community regarding rights for disabled people? Because you've said that you are disabled, so would know.
Yeah, so thinking about this question, I really just feel like what needs to happen in Madison is a lot of awareness. When I was an intern for Daniel Witt at Madison City Schools with Sarah Arnsparger from JC, we did a documentary that's on YouTube still about being disabled in school and what it was like to be disabled in school, you know, how to interact with people who are disabled in school. And I think it was a really important moment for us because Sarah and I are both disabled. And not a lot of people saw it at the time, but I hope now that I'm saying this, a lot of people will go out and watch it and share it and know that it is important to be aware of, you know, just because you're not aware now, it's not a bad thing, but you need to choose to be aware for the sake of the people that are around you so that you can understand how their health could be impacted by your presence.
Definitely. So we will try to get the link for that documentary somewhere near this video so people can see that as well. And the same question for the LGBT community. What are some specific issues we need to solve here?
There have been quite a few cases of intolerance towards LGBTQ people in the Madison and Huntsville area over the past couple of years. So I don't want to answer it with the same answer of awareness, but I do want to say that it is important to reach out to your public officials and make it known that you are there. So if you are a member of the LGBTQ community or you are an ally, you need to make your presence known in this area, period. That's a different thing than awareness, I would say. I think that has to do more with people, like, not in a threatening way or anything, just like, it's important for people to know that, and just know, like, this is my friendly neighborhood, you know, member of the LGBTQ community, and I'm going to get to know about their sexuality, you know, and become tolerant. I think it's important.
Right. So like, so people will know that people around them are members of this community and it's not some far away idea. Next,
Right.
is how do you cope with activist fatigue, especially with this year that's been terrible?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for this one other than drink a lot of water. And I know it sounds like I'm joking, but as a person who, you know, gets around a lot, you know, eats a lot of salty food, you know, you need to drink a lot of water. It's just so important. And it really like helps you be more mindful about your day. If you watch, it does.
Yeah, so like definitely taking care of yourself in small ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the Black Lives Matter movement getting global coverage last year, we saw a lot of performative activism on social media that kind of disappeared after a few weeks. So how can people, especially the high school students who are watching, who maybe aren't able to donate to Black Lives Matter, how can they help cause real change?
Buy Black owned, invest in Black owned businesses. Not like, if not, you know, go out to eat with your family to a Black owned business. You know, it's not just about what you can do as an individual, it's what you can do with the units around you. There's so much power in numbers, right? So get to know the people around you, and find out if they have the same values as you. And if they don't, you know, just make a choice. And be clear about why you made that choice.
Yeah.
Because that affects change.
So it starts with each person. Do you have anything else you would like to share with us?
I want to go back to the question about activist fatigue, something that has been extremely important to me in my times as an activist, and in my work as an activist, is my community with Black women. So I would say that finding community with, you know, those that you love, finding community with those like you is like really, I mean, finding community with those unlike you is very important, but it's very nurturing to be with those like you. And so I really encourage that, and encourage, you know, once you get into that circle, encourage each other to take good care of each other.
Thank you, Love, for taking the time to sit down and have a great conversation with us. Our next speaker might be a familiar face. Mr. Joseph Roberts is a teacher at a local middle school who sat down with Avani to give his insight on Black history and Black History Month.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in today. So our interviewer is Mr. Roberts, and just as a general background of what Mr. Roberts does, he is currently a math teacher at Liberty, a middle school. And in addition to that, he's also a husband, a father, a speaker, a certified educator, and uses social media to inspire thousands. So Mr. Roberts, just like a little bit more about like his past, he was raised in a home in which he calls to be a home of trauma. And so he's used his experience there to develop himself into a gifted educator who has worked with the youth for the last 20 years. And so during this time, he's developed methods of connecting, correcting, and directing young people to live happier and more fulfilled lives. And so currently, through speaking in numerous seminars, he trains educators, parents, and organizations who work with young people to do the same. So Mr. Roberts today has graciously agreed to prepare a presentation in which he'll be talking a little bit more about motivation and how it connects to Black History Month. So without further ado, I'll let Mr. Roberts take the stage.
Hi, hello everybody. Appreciate you having me. I count it a privilege and an opportunity anytime I'm able to speak to anybody about making their lives better, about changing the society that we're in. And I appreciate Yav for inviting me. And I appreciate my hostess as well, who's been very gracious. So it's Black History Month. And I wanted to start off telling you guys a story. When I was younger, about 11 years old, I remember a large Caucasian white man banging on my door with an 8-inch hunting knife in his hand. You see, what had happened was my father and he had gotten into a car accident. My father drove an old beat up Nova, I believe is what it was. And it was dark brown and it was loud and it was not fast. It was not comfortable and the heat didn't work, but it was our car. And even though we were sort of in the middle of poverty, it was how we got around. And somehow my father was out, had gotten into a car accident with this gentleman. Well, that was the day before. And several things you have to recognize. There were no cell phones at the time. You didn't have to have insurance. It wasn't a requirement of every car to have insurance. So what the two of them did was wrote down each other's information so that they could get back in contact with each other and then deal with it. You know, the damages could be covered and paid for. Well, we didn't even have a phone at the time. Now, most people had a home phone. Nobody had cell phones, but most people had a home phone, but we didn't even have a home phone because we were the situation that we were in financially. And so all my father could give the man was our address. Well, we didn't know that any of this was going to turn into the situation that I described thus far. But what happened next is how that happened. My mother heard a car driving down the driveway. We lived in a triplex, very, very small apartment. We lived in the middle apartment. And we saw a strange car come down. So we just peeked out the window to see who it was. The person got out and walked to the wrong door. They were looking for us. We didn't know it at the time, but they walked to the wrong door. And my mother to this day, and I believe it as well, believes that God gave us that opportunity to see what was happening so we could prepare ourselves. And as he was walking by our apartment to go to the last apartment, we could see the hunting knife in the back of his pants. And he went to the door, banged on the door. It was these tiny, cheap apartments. And so we heard everything that was asked, and we heard him ask for my father. So then when they told him he was over here, they came back over to our apartment. And so there he was, banging, yelling at us, saying the N-word over and over and cussing us out, while my mother told us to just stand still, be quiet, and hope he leaves. Once again, we didn't have a house phone, so we couldn't call. We couldn't even call 911. We couldn't leave. My father wasn't home at the time. So here I am, my first real experience with racism, with feeling like I was being called out and mistreated simply because of the color of my skin. My father, when he had gotten into the accident with the gentleman had had experiences before with African Americans. And I guess those experiences didn't go well. And he assumed, simply because we were also African American, that was going to be the same problem with us. And he thought he was going to take matters into his own hand. So for me, Black history is more than just a month. It's a way to remember that I no longer have to be treated like that if everybody in the world can recognize a couple of things. So one of the things I learned that day was, no matter what happens to you, no matter what you're going through, no matter what your situation, don't let that situation change your future. And I like to use the phrase, let your past make you better, not bitter. And I like to think that that situation, combined with all the other situations I've been in, helped inspire me to say, I would like to reach out to more people. I would like to share with more people so that that experience won't have to happen to others. And even if that experience does happen to others, because today we know similar experiences are still happening in this country every day. that hopefully I can give them the tools to deal better with that. Two of those reasons that I believe that we struggle or that we continue to struggle, and that Black History Month can help us with that. The first one of those reasons is that we should use Black History Month as an opportunity to never forget. I think if what history in general is used and studied over and over again, and I couldn't stand history class. I thought it was boring because I didn't understand at the time what it stood for. But over and over again, if you recognize a mistake you made in the past and you continue to review that, you can understand and not go back there anymore. So I think it's great for all of America to remember the mistake that slavery was, the mistake that Jim Crow was, the mistakes that happened in our past. And I think taking just 1 month is the very least that we can do to help everybody in the country remember that that's not a place that we want to go back to. That's not a thing that we want to be a part of. And so we talk about people who have brought us out of that. We talk about abolitionists. We talk about people who freed slaves. We talk about all the people that were involved, and Martin Luther King, and all of those people who are part of the struggle to make that free, as trying to remember, what happened and that we don't want to go back there anymore. But that's just one of the reasons. Not only that, I like to use the quote, and it's from George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. You are destined to repeat it if you don't remember. If you have a teacher who constantly gives quizzes on Friday and you forgot, if next Friday comes and you aren't prepared for the quiz, whether they announce it or not, that's your fault. You have to constantly be prepared for what might be coming by reviewing the past. So if you see in the last 3 or 4 weeks, time and time again on Fridays, there's a quiz, then you should be able to be prepared for the quiz on Friday. And I think it's the same thing for us. If every year we review what happened, how it happened, and what were the negative things out of it and what we learned from it, we won't have to worry about repeating. And I definitely don't want to, and I'm sure you don't want to repeat what happened as well. The second thing, which is the thing that I want to really focus on, I think Black History Month really is a great opportunity and time to deal with, is knowing your value. I think a part of the problem is that in the media, if minorities in general, but it's of course African Americans, are not portrayed enough and often enough, are not given roles that lift us up, are not given jobs and opportunities all the time, are not put in positions of power. All of these things now sometimes leave a vacuum or a gap that don't make us feel as valued as we really should. And so I think it's very important for two sides of the coin. One side of the coin is for African Americans and minorities in general to know their own value, regardless of what someone else has to say about it, regardless of the opportunities handed to you, knowing our own value. So that's one side of the coin. And then to me, the other side of the coin, which I think Black History Month has great value in, is letting everybody else know our value as well. So that when the opportunity comes to include us, when the opportunity comes to bring us together, they will absolutely be able to look at the historical proof, not only currently, but just historically, how we've had great value. And that's really what I wanted to focus on today, is our value. Either way, this quote says, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And for hundreds of years now, that has been the problem for minorities in this country. Our value has not been seen by others. I just want to make sure that we do not join that fight. And while I hope that time and week and month as we go on and on, that more people are recognizing our value, we can't wait on them, because our value is the same no matter what. There is an opportunity that where people take a $20 bill and crumble it up and stomp on it and dirty it up and then ask, do you still want it? And for most people, they still do, because just because something was mistreated or overlooked or misunderstood doesn't change its value, and neither does that for African Americans as well. I want to talk about a few people, and remember, what we're looking for is just the concept of their value. I love this gentleman right here. Number one, it really highlights the power of using our voice. Elaine Locke he was a philosopher and an author, and most importantly, he was the author of the book, The New Negro. And The New Negro was a book whose thoughts and ideas inspired the confidence and the flair of the Harlem Renaissance. And that was a time when tons of Black Americans were getting together and dressing up and becoming great at music and art and dance and feeling alive and sharing and enjoying each other in time and recognizing the value they had in themselves and having a good time together. But that was all sort of spawned and started and sparked by Alain Locke. And what he talked about in the book helped everyone recognize their particular value. And so even though maybe he wasn't a billionaire, or maybe he wasn't a movie star, or he wasn't an athlete, what he did, what he said, and what he talked about, much like the group, this organization here, what he talked about and what he shared and what he stood for, now sparked a whole generation of people who felt better about themselves and who lived a better life because of what he did. So I love what Alain Locke did. Another one is Guy Bluford. Guy Bluford was fought in the Vietnam War. He was in the Air Force, but then he translated that understanding of flying and then was able to be the first African American to go to the moon or to go into space. Now, here's what I'm saying. The value that he presented, the research that he was able to do, the what he stood for in representing us, it is exactly what I'm alluding to today, is the value that each of these people share. We have Locke before, who shared value and helped develop the people of this country by what he talked about and what he wrote about. Now we have someone who served his country in more than one way, and now was brilliant enough and worked hard enough and continued to develop until he was able to go out, literally out of this world, and represent African Americans in that way. So he too is just another example of the great value that African Americans bring to this country, and we cannot forget that. And one of the last, but definitely not the least, is Oprah Winfrey. And I was talking with a student the other day, and I was just shocked and just embarrassed that they had no idea who Oprah Winfrey was. If you do not know, Oprah Winfrey is also who the OWN network, that whole, all those television shows that come on that particular channel, she started that. She started Oprah magazine. She had a long running talk show that was the top talk show on television for years. And it all started from her just being a journalist. But I have you know that, you know, she was assaulted and molested as a child. And so not only did she have the fact that she had to fight through being a woman, not only did she have to fight through being an African-American woman, she also had to fight through the trauma that she was exposed to as a child. So after fighting through all these things, she has now brought so much value. And I put there how much she's worth at this time. She's worth $2.7 billion. And that's amazing. And that's awesome. And that's good for her. But I want to be clear that anytime someone reaches billionaire status, it is because they have helped that many more people. People come to you because you're a help to them, because you bring value into their lives. You help change their lives in whatever sort of way. You're giving jobs to millions of people. And so many people have become millionaires through her. Some of you guys may have heard of Spanx, those sort of clothes that women wear that has made that woman into a billionaire. Her first big break came from being featured on Oprah's top 10 things. So my point is, her value that she has brought to this country has not only, you know, brought value just for her, but for hundreds and thousands and millions of other people as well. We as African Americans have value to bring. You know, we are valuable, and we need to recognize that. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. I think a perfect example of not recognizing value is currently happening right now. Right now, if you don't know about it, there's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is cryptocurrency. It's money, but it's digital money. All right. And it's been around for a while, but just now it is exploding. And this gentleman here was just in 2011, he posted his frustration because he had 1,700 coins of Bitcoin. And he bought them, listen, be carefully, follow me, for 6 cents each. And then a little while later, they each went up to 30 cents each. So he said, if I bought these for 6 cents and now they're 30 cents, he sold them and made $510. He was happy with that. I'll tell you right now that the value of Bitcoin per coin is no longer 6 cents. and it's no longer 30 cents, it's $50,000 per coin. If he had recognized the value of those 1,700 Bitcoins and held on to them, right now, he would have $85 million worth of Bitcoin. It can be devastating if you don't recognize your value, or if you don't recognize the value of those around you. Not only can it be devastating to you and your heart, but it can be devastating to your literal pockets as well without recognizing that. And so for me, this month is a key opportunity to, number one, not forget the past, not forget that we don't want to go back there, and recognize we need to be different. We need to change things, and we need to set up our laws and our government and everything, our institutions around not going back in that direction is the first thing. And the second thing is, look at our value, recognize our internal value, and recognize the value of those around you. If you do that, I promise you, your life will be far more fulfilling, far more enjoyable. And not only that, it might help you financially as well. Make sure you take the time during this month, if not the whole year, to look at those who are around you, and especially for minorities, recognize their value and use them and be a partner with them, rather than just seeing who they are, but partner with them because of their value, and work together to see what we can do to become better people all together. Reach me, but I just wanted to share that with you guys today, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Roberts, for that amazing presentation. And now I'm just going to take some time to ask you a couple of questions I formed. So my first is, thank you once again for sharing that really moving story about, like, how during a really vulnerable time in your life, you were able to push forward and all of that. So my question to you is, given that we all are in, to some extent, really vulnerable times right now, with coronavirus being rampant as ever, I was just wondering how you would advise students to continue pushing themselves and to continue pushing themselves out of their comfort zone and keep setting goals for themselves in such precarious times.
Absolutely. A couple of the ways I would do that. Number one is you have to try to think about your task in terms of the outcome that you want, in terms of the result that you want. Do not think about them in terms of the things you need to do during the course of the day. Those begin to bog you down. Those begin to frustrate you. They begin to overwhelm you. You have to think about it in terms of what you overall want to accomplish. So that's the first step, is to think about what you want in the end result. Then you say, okay, I'll do these things to get there. But nobody's excited about, great, let me go write a 3-page paper. That's not exciting. That's not like going to keep you motivated. So that's one of the first things. And then the second thing is you need to have something outside of yourself that you're fighting for, that you're deciding to do, that you're working for. That could be another person. That can be an altruistic goal, as in, I want to help other people be better. But you need something outside of yourself. I know it sounds like, let's say, money or fame is going to be something that will drive you, and it will for a while. But if you want something lasting, find something or someone outside of yourself to do that for. So those are two things I would do to keep motivated.
Yeah, I think that especially circles back to your point about value. Now, going a little bit more into what you talked about as value in your presentation, I think part of value comes from also having a lot of respect for yourself, and having a lot of self-worth. So my next question is, what is really important in being able to find and express your voice in society, to find that self-worth? And
that's a great point. A great question. First of all, I just want to say that I think that we sometimes downplay our voices in lieu of things to show, and maybe it's social media that's done that to us, and I'm not against social media at all. I have all of them. I have Instagram and whatever, Facebook and Twitter and even a TikTok. But my point is, sometimes they put us into a show and tell sort of mindset. And so I think that we're more apt to show what we can do, show what we can dance, show what we're wearing, show where we went. rather than sharing our voices. And as we see just from one of the examples that we talked about with Alain Locke, the father sort of the Harlem Renaissance, it came through more of his voice, like he wrote his thoughts and his philosophies. So I think using that voice, just sharing your opinion and recognizing that your opinion matters in the group of things. And if everybody shares their opinions together, we can brainstorm together to come to something. But we've got to hear from everybody. And your opinion may not be the same as everybody's, but still be willing to share it. What you have to say definitely has value in it, and we want to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's just such an incredibly important point. But also in your presentation, you talked a lot about like understanding, you talked a lot about like understanding your past and learning from your past mistakes. So I just want to take this time to ask you maybe what advice you would give to yourself at the start of your career, or maybe even early on in your childhood.
That's an easy one. I already know that one. Hands down, it's not caring what other people thought, not caring what other people think. I think when you grow up in a home of trauma, and in my particular case, my father was a drug addict, and so they fought, and he had the drug issues, and eventually they broke up, and it was just years and years of just not healthy living. That caused me to want to hide from everybody that I was around. I wanted to hide the fact that my father was a drug addict. I wanted to hide how poor we were. I wanted to hide. And so I was trying to always put on a different front when I was out. And I wish now, I wish, what I would want to tell my younger self is don't worry about what they think. Their opinion isn't going to change anything, and they can't, and they don't really care about you that much. Somehow you feel like everybody's always looking at you, whatever it is that is different about you, you think everybody's always looking at it, and it's not. It may be one person in the whole school, and they may say something about it, but nobody else really cares that much. And so don't care about what other people think. And when you start to just live your life, what you want to do, the people who really matter, who support you in that, will come closer to you, and you'll have a really, really enjoyable existence. And so a lot of my misery as a young man came from, trying to hide and fight through that. So I would absolutely tell my younger self, look, don't care about what other people think. You be you.
Yeah, I think that's especially really relatable advice now, really applicable to us as high school students, because we're kind of like in that, critical stage in our lives right now.
You think it is. You think it is, and that's what's so funny. You're right. It's so not critical. These people that are so cool in high school right now, and that so matter so much, as soon as you guys leave high school, they won't mean anything, and nobody will know them, and you will forget all about them. But it's hard to to believe that when you're in the moment. But absolutely, you're right.
Yeah, going back to your point about like looking into the future. So my next question is, so you really talked about how important Black History Month is, but I understand that during COVID times, it may not always be easy to network with like-minded people and being able, be able to connect with other people to the same degree as we generally would be, under normal circumstances. So my next and final question is, how would you suggest celebrating Black History Month in, such special times?
That's a great question, first of all. I don't think that celebrating Black History Month is about us necessarily getting together. I think even if we can't get together as much as it would be nice to, I think it's more about internalizing what happened in the past and recognizing what we should be able to do different. So it's more about internalizing those things. It's more about honing in on what we went through as a people, honing in what African Americans had to suffer through and had to go through, and what the rest of the country put them through, and then internalizing that and deciding that we're not going to do that anymore. To me, that's a celebration of that. A celebration is you putting together a plan for how you're going to do things differently. I'd rather that. I'd rather a change be put in place than someone just say, hey, great job, and then continue on living the way they've been living. If we as individuals, because we can't get together as much as we would like to, can figure out how we're going to make changes in our individual lives and in our spheres, in the areas where we have control, that is the greatest celebration of Black history that's possible. And then that will continue on for generations rather than just a month of it.
Yeah, that all sounds really great. I particularly liked your point about like actually for having a path forward, we must recognize to live in the present. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, Mr. Roberts. And once again, thank you so much for taking time from your valuable day and really like, you know, shedding your knowledge on us. It's really appreciated.
Absolutely. I'm glad to do it. And thank you for having me.
Okay, and so for my final question, it's so we talked a lot about like looking and recognizing the importance of the past, but my next question is, Mr. Roberts, what do you suggest is the path forward for us, both on the societal and like individual level? What can we do more as a society and also as individuals?
As a society, I think we need to recognize that the color of someone's skin has nothing to do with it. I know that sounds so childish and so straightforward, but it doesn't. And I think that there are a large group of us who are starting to recognize some of the other ramifications of that original thought. I think nowadays there are very few people who would say, no, it's simply because of the color of their skin. I think now there are sort of undercurrent behaviors because of a system that has been put in place now that we're not noticing. So I think one of the major things that can be done is recognizing that there is a system in place that is keeping things, maybe not simply because of the color of your skin, but now because of other things simply related to that. So recognizing that the system needs to be changed from the inside out, and what are things that can be done to change the system. So that's one. And on an individual basis, I think there's a couple of things that can be done. I think that, especially for non-minorities, I think an opportunity for you, even if you aren't a person of power, if you're a person of power, whatever, you're a president, you're a leader at your job, you're in politics, you have the opportunity for change. If you're not, and you are related to them, or you are good friends with them, you have the opportunity to put pressure on your friends, on your uncle and your auntie and those who are in power or those who have positions of influence, and put pressure on them to make changes that you believe. They love you. You're their favorite niece. You're their favorite cousin. So you can put pressure. So that's an individual thing. It doesn't take a lot of people knowing about that. In a phone call or in text, you can talk to people and say, put pressure on them to make changes. And then on the other side, if you are a minority, you cannot shy away from those interactions. I have noticed a lot of military babies, people who grew up in the military, whose parents were in the military, they get along with almost everybody. And I think it's because their parents had to fight together. They had to learn how to work together. And through fighting together in the Air Force or fighting together in the Marines, they've recognized that they can count on people of other color just like they can count on their own. And then they just move past it. I think not shying away from connecting with those outside of your race is one thing that we can do. And it takes getting outside your comfort zone and doing things that are uncomfortable and maybe unnatural to you and not a common thing. But as an individual, that's something that you can do as well to sort of stretch yourself as we go on this path forward.
Thank you to Mr. Roberts for that powerful message. Next up, we have Jordan Holden interviewing Mrs. Rosemary Robinson, a local college counselor with a message on academic and career opportunities.
Ready? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Hello, Jordan and Quincy. My name is Rosemary Robinson, and I have been a diversity practitioner for over 15 years. I have worked in student affairs and higher education for over 30 years, and I just really love working with college-age students and helping them to make their decisions about college and life beyond college.
Awesome. So what opportunity, I guess you could say, what would you recommend for students in high school, that would make them, stand out on their college resumes and stuff?
Okay, so how to stand out as a Black student. I think definitely you need to take the ACT as many times as you can. I know it's expensive, and I know it takes a long time to take it, but it's a standardized test that you just kind of get used to the format of taking the test. And I think if you take that more than 2 or 3 times, you should better your score. Also, I'd say definitely get a study tool or tutoring for this ACT, because again, the standardized tests of ACT and SAT are normed on Caucasian students. So we as African Americans usually don't write and read in that level, in that criteria. So we get familiar with it. We're better off taking the test. Also, to better stand out for college applications, I think if you get involved in activities like this outside of a classroom, many times your employer wants to know just how flexible you are and how you think outside the box. Anyone can study for a test and ace a test, but are you able to be creative in your thinking? Are you able to do deductive reasoning? Are you able to work as a team with other people? And those are skills that you will learn working with other people outside of a classroom. Also, definitely get someone to write your recommendation letters who truly know you. So for me to write a standard, hello, I'm recommending this student X, Y, and Z for this application. She's a good student. She was in my church choir for 5 years. It's easy. It doesn't really tell me a lot about you as a person. So you want to get someone who can speak to your ability, who can speak to your skill set, who can speak to your ability to learn, to work with other people, and someone who can actually put your skills in a way that person can almost see you developing as a great fit for their college program and for their career paths.
Awesome. Also, okay, once you get to college, what opportunities would you recommend for Black students to get involved in?
Okay, once you get to college, definitely network. And many times, students who go to HBCUs, they can be more limited. I like HBCUs, but in the whole context of diversity, even at HBCU, definitely tend to network still with people that are different than you. So they may have the same skin color, but definitely look at different things they like to do, different hobbies, different activities. You want to be well versed in what you're able to do, what you eat, what activities you choose to go to. So definitely get involved in any activity that is university credit is given and that the university supports. Like most colleges will have like a student government association. You have those, I'm sure, in high school. That gives you a chance to show your leadership skills for the community, to do volunteer work, and also to be able to read and write policy and to be in a leadership role. So definitely get involved in like an SGA type of a role. Also, any leadership role that may come to play, like a club president or club vice president, again, it's leadership. And those skills that you will learn there are transferable to the workplace and into a community position. Also, get to know your professors, because when you get down to that scholarship and that next letter for your postgraduate school choice, you're going to need a solid letter of recommendation. And again, you don't want that letter that she came to class, she was always prompted in class. You want that reference letter from that instructor who says, Jordan was the top 10 of my class, and this is why I say that. Jordan is a very astute young lady. It will be great in her career path. This is why I say that. So you really want to get to know your professors and them to know you, and not just be that next number on the class roll, but get to know your professors.
Awesome. Quincy, is there anything you'd like to ask? I know that sorry, Quincy, you had to say something. So, Ms. Rose, I know you're very passionate about the whole, I guess, STEM aspect of school, correct? Mm-hmm. You're saying would you like to talk about that as well?
Sure. So I am passionate about STEM, and I also love non-STEM. And let me tell you why I love them both, okay? So I love STEM only because for people of color, That is a great way to make good dollars. Okay, so making good dollars, it's STEM. But by the same token, I don't like that it is that way because everyone is not great in STEM. And like myself, I wasn't great in math. So I chose a liberal arts track. I went business undergrad, and I got my master's in psychology. So I want to make a lot of money too, though, right? So just because I'm not in STEM doesn't mean I want to be poor. So I think it's unfortunate that we have to say go towards STEM, which is a science, technology, engineering, or math track. But in reality, the dollars are there. The government contracts, all of your engineering companies, your Fortune 500 companies, they all work in a STEM track. The money is there. But I say couple that with a minor that you truly love. So if you're going to do engineering, do music, do engineering, do math, do art, do a hobby that you're passionate about, so you can find a good half 50-50 win-win there. Also, if you're going to do STEM, definitely start in the 9th grade or even 8th grade, taking math courses. Math is one of those courses, you either love it or you don't. If you don't love it, you have to perfect it. And starting at grade 8, 9, get into those courses, you can start learning the foundations of it and liking it, get into algebra, spend your summers, bad as it sounds, taking a math class, even if it's only for 6 weeks. But get in that habit of taking those math and STEM classes so that you can be more competitive when it comes down to the application process. And some schools are also now allowing MIS, some of those business courses, to be considered STEM because it still has some data analysis and data collection in there. Also, on the liberal arts track or the nursing track, there's still opportunities there because every engineer needs somebody to write their notes up for them. And so there's still that need there. But always definitely find what you're passionate about and definitely do that. And then look at your goals. If you want a certain salary, cap, definitely look toward that, but don't miss out what you're passionate about, because if not, you'll go to work making money and still be unhappy, and you don't want that. You want to be able to go to work, have a career that you're passionate about and that you love, yet make money, and then still feel fulfilled.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think that was everything that we had to talk about just for preparation of school and then once you're in school. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
I do. So I do want to say I really like this idea because I think many times that, your teachers in grade school do your work. You got to do your work. You got to get a job. Do this. And many students now, and I'm raising 2 millennials, well, 2X students, I call them, I guess. They're not quite millennials, but they're not wanting to do college right now. They're wanting to do other things. They want the money, but not the college, because they understand, why should I be tied to a career path through college when I want to do different things? So they're looking more at what's called gig economy. They want to learn and get certificates on programs, how to code, how to do arts, how to do technology, how to do Facebooks. They want gigs, and these gigs will pay them enough money for them to have the lifestyle they want. They don't want to be tied to a 4-year degree. I get through with my degree and now I'm tied to this one track. So definitely do your research. There's some assessments out there that you can actually do to tell you what is some of your passion for career paths. Seek those out. Don't be the first to say, I just want to go to college because my mama told me, my daddy told me. Definitely be in tune to what you really want to do. Have options, be flexible, and make informed decisions.
Our last speaker is Mr. Devyn Keith, a Huntsville City Council member and local entrepreneur. He sat down with Quincy Bowie to talk business and politics.
My name is Devyn Keith. By day, I am a city councilor. I call myself the janitor because all I do is clean up messes. And by, I guess, evening, night, and sometimes early in the morning, I own a coffee shop in Northwest Huntsville called Darkside. And when I get a chance as well, I teach at Alabama A&M as an assistant professor in political science. So overall, I'm just a typical guy. I mess up a man but God, but I consider myself, if anything, one and of Huntsville, Alabama, the biggest, greatest of all cheerleaders of this city.
Awesome. All right. Sarah told me that you would have something prepared if you wanted to go ahead and get started with that. I do have questions if that.
No, that was so really what I wanted to introduce, and really I'm going to leave the floor for mostly you, is that to anybody and all who are watching, as we talk about Black history, as we talk about making history and being aware of community and reflection, it's not necessarily always in remembrance for us as we idolize, and rightfully so, people who have gone before us, John Lewis, Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, names that we do and do not know. It is always not just to remember, but to recognize, how do I replicate some of the successes that I've seen? That doesn't mean that you always have to stand on the balcony, or you always have to stand at a podium or at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial and give a speech to millions of Americans. Black history is for us to replicate moments in history. Can you be the first in your family to own a business, to graduate from high school or college, or in my case, not only college, but secondary, getting your master's, and potentially, Lord willing, I'll be the first to have a PhD. What do you do that is something different that can replicate things that you remember, have learned about, seen and heard of, that have impact not only on the community outside, but the community inside, your family, your friends? And there's a reason for that. And I tell people all the time, especially in your situation, because you are, without a doubt, anybody else who's watching, in the greatest time in life to take in information. And all you have to do is this one little that sits between problem and solution. The shortest distance between problem and solution is innovation. Innovation shortens the distance between a problem and a solution. And if you are in a place and a space in your life right now where you realize that you do things differently, you think differently. When you see something in an image, you know how to angle your photos, not just for selfies, but you know how to take a dope image photo. You know how to edit it in a way that everybody likes it. Something about you is so different in the way that you speak, the way that you write poetry, the way that you understand coding, the way that you know cars, the way that you know people. You're different. And that difference allows innovation. And that innovation, again, shortens the difference between problem and solution. And all Black History Month is a remembrance of things that we should replicate. At one point, the problem was African Americans could not sit at a lunch counter and or ride a bus with individuals who did not look like them, or must be segregated and separated to do so. That's a problem. Innovation came from 24, 22, 21-year-old group of freedom riders like John Lewis, or a 25-year-old, 24-year-old Martin Luther King and Abernathy, who said, let's just do a bus boycott movement. Innovation. Solution, desegregation of buses. So if you apply that metric in months and moments like this to whatever is going on in your home and in your heart, if you have an opportunity to inject yourself as innovation, you will shorten the distance between problem and solution. And that's all this month should do, is remind you that you should remember to replicate all of the changes, all of the steps, all of the sacrifices that have been taken for those before you, no matter the color of your skin. The actions that you take to innovate and shorten the distance between problem and solution will help people who look like you and don't look like you. And it is important, if you were to talk to your grandma, your auntie, your mother, your father, ask them, when it came to me, what was the biggest sacrifice, the biggest innovation, the biggest problem you had to solve in order to give me the life that I'm living right now? And if you took 5 minutes with your parents and let them tell you the things that they did to make sure you got here, to make sure that the house you live in, you will be shocked at how much innovation they put in. So that's all I wanted to share. I'm just a fan of the generation right now, because you could take in information. You could make a TikTok video, which I still have not figured out. I don't know, like put the music over anyway. and you can sweep the world, literally, whether it is a dance, whether it is the opportunity to express how to make the perfect grilled cheese sandwich. You got it at your fingertips. Now you get to inject yourself in between problem and solution.
Thank you. That is a lovely point.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Well, let's get started into these questions, and I don't have too many for you.
All right.
Let's start with how can we best support Black businesses and, kind of allocate the Black dollar the most effective in your opinion?
I think for anybody, especially in the African American community, you should ask yourself, are the places that you typically go offering services that are above and beyond board? So I like to always give an example. You probably already supported Black business knowingly, and you'll probably do it for the rest of your life because I'm looking at your hair. To a brother barber, I ain't going to nobody else because he know my edge and my hairline. That's what I got a hat on right now because I got to wait to put his hands on this hair. I ain't trusting nobody. You have to correlate that to other aspects. Where can I find services that are so specific that I enjoy, not that are exponentially outside of my range? I don't want you to have to drive to Birmingham. But there are a number of Black businesses that do things that you enjoy. And the opportunity, again, is best understood what you do right now with your hair, maybe all the way down to your clothes, your church. Those opportunities allow you to be very specific in the services you receive. And it is not to exclude anybody, but it is to be intentional in getting the service that you want provided to you. So the best way to support Black businesses is, one, find out by diversifying your research and awareness. If I love coffee, is there a place that makes coffee Kool-Aid, as we call it, dark side? Go to, it doesn't have to be every day, but gives me the services that I look for. The same intentionality you put behind your barber or your whoever does your twist and your locks, putting that behind other services is just as important.
All right. Question 2. So as an entrepreneur, can you speak to the importance of, just believing in yourself and, kind of having the gall to trust?
Well, I can tell you as an entrepreneur, both sides of it. And that is, an idea does have value. What we really wanted to invest in the dark side was actually culture. We knew we could do it through coffee. If you come to dark side, we play the music that you hear on NBA Live 2K. We play things that we know our community and culture enjoy, and we're not overseen by a corporation. We respond to people as they tell us what they want to see. From the sandwiches to the coffee, as I said itself, we can dictate. And being an entrepreneur, you love the freedom of having the opportunity to have quick response, especially from consumer and customer. But, some of the things that are going to come with that is self-doubt, because you're going to ask yourself, I'm not hitting my margins as I originally thought I would. It's not taking off the way that I thought it would. And the worst thing to do is to go to Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and see the comparison of somebody who started selling lemonade and they turned into a millionaire. Because that one person is literally the same mathematical anomaly as somebody playing the lottery. Because there's been millions of people who've sold lemonade and their recipe didn't take off. But that doesn't mean that you won't be successful. And many people don't understand, there are millions of lottery ticket winners in the nation. They don't win the jackpot. They win the Powerball. They win lesser numbers and lesser amounts. So maybe you don't win the million, or maybe you do, but there were still $50,000 winners, $100,000 winners, $200,000 winners. We don't hear about them. They don't get the hoopla. But I'm sure you would have asked them, they're just as happy that they played the lottery that same day because they won $100,000. So being realistic and understanding, doubt will come, frustration will come, but understand that you are in the same fight as others who've made it. And don't compare yourself to somebody in a place and space that doesn't mean you won't reach it, but in a reality you don't live in.
I think that's going to be especially, kind of powerful for hearing that from the perspective of a Generation Z kid, because of social media and things, we often compare ourselves a lot. Kind of taking that in and understanding that there are different levels of success is really important. So thank you for
Absolutely.
question 3. So I know that our side it's not just you, it's a whole team of people. So how can we, as students and the younger generation, go about finding other like-minded individuals that can help us achieve our dreams, encourage us to grow?
Oh, let me tell you, this is one of my most favorite stories. Joe, who's a part of the team, I was in economics class in Jan term, which is a January term at Sanford, my my undergrad year. And there was this guy who sat in the front of this, it's almost like a movie. He would sit in the front of class and he would correct the econ teacher. You're too young. You probably weren't even born in 2007. But in 2007, 2008, the crash happened. And many people were pulling their money out of the market. Well, my friend Joe was putting his money into the market and doubling down on basically buying bonds against GM, some motor companies. And our econ team one day was like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? And they're getting back and forth with it. Now, again, I'm in a classroom full of football players. They're not paying attention. I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I wasn't either. But he never backed down. Sure enough, I think it was probably 7 months later, I was basically like, hey, Joe, I need some help. I remember you from my econ class. He was like, oh, yeah, no problem. So he ended up tutoring me on a couple of things I was doing for my next econ class. And I said, hey, man, whatever happened? And he said that those things matured at almost $45,000 to $55,000. Now, this is a 21-year-old
Nice.
who made $50,000 off of his own intuition against his own teachers, who was an investor and had a portfolio, really good portfolio for Bach School. I became friends with him. He wasn't a football player. Joe's the corniest, weirdest cat in the world. He gets on my nerves. His hair was falling out at like age 19. He's this awkward. He has a heart. He's a good Christian, but he is not the guy I'm bothered with every day. And he's become one of my best friends. And when I said, hey, man, I want to start a company, he was like, I can help you out with an SBA loan. I was like, well, say less. Come on, Joe, turn up. So we went from there to the relationship that blossomed. And I said to anybody, if you have friends that like you, that's wonderful. Those individuals are not called partners. Those individuals might be called investors. So if I like what you do, I'm gonna put money into your company and let you go do it. That's Shark Tank. Those are investors. Your partners are the people that grind with you, that stay up late and put labels on clothing with you, who make calls, who flip burgers, who make cups of coffee. If you believe that your investors are your partners, you're wrong. Your parents can be your investor. Don't let them be your partner. It's your idea. It is your work. You find people like Joe who are going to be partners, who are going to do the hard work with you, and then you find investors. So understanding that management break is the most important thing. We had to learn it the hard way, but an investor is somebody that is separate and believes in you. A partner is the half of you or the third of you, no matter how many partners you have. All of y'all put together make the company. The investor, if I took him away and paid him back, we still running. If I took Joe out of there, I'm hurting because he does so much for the company.
Okay, thank you. Question 4. Let's see. So I think in the life of every Black kid, there comes a moment in class where we're talking about something, whether it be related to U.S. history or just something involving Black culture, Black history, and it feels like you have to be that representative, kind of that voice for all of us. And this kind of ties into something you were talking about. You recently posted a video on your Instagram about holding all of your members accountable.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can begin to broach conversations about how diversity, about how accountability is a group effort?
So let me say it this way, and it is so tough. That's a great question, young man. whoever's watching this, if you are an African American and you are uncomfortable because you know that you have experiences that are different that maybe your friends will never experience or they never will understand, what I'm about to say is going to be so tough, but it needs to be stated. Without a doubt, that's reality. And that's so reality, right? That we had to have signifying legislation in 1960s all the way to 1970s that desegregated and separated America. Now, that does not mean, again, that you, maybe your fathers or grandfathers lived through it. That does not mean in any way that the direct impact of those, you can sit on the bus wherever you wanted to, but the reverberating effects are still happening. My mother was born in 1968. Same year the Housing Right Act was signed. So a woman born the year of the legislation is still alive. So the nation, as one could imagine, majority of the people who are in the baby boomer or elder age of, and that's leadership, that's political, private ownership, all over, were born to a nation that doesn't look like the one you are. So you have to deal with people who have committed what I say the sins of the nation, having power still, as well as wealth and family. You are now at the very bottom being born to a nation that not even my parents were born to, or your grandparents were born to, and dealing with the tears of that. And it is not as if I'm trying to say you can't make change. I mean, I got elected at 26, became president of the council at 27. That one numbered the good Lord, but a young Black man once that was never heard of. But that doesn't mean I don't have to deal with the discomfort of individuals who are, listen to this, 3 decades my senior. The next youngest council member is 30 years older than me.
Wow.
So to put that in perspective, that I'm dealing with people, not 1, not 2, but 3 decades older, 3 decades of experience, 3 decades of a different nation. This nation has changed in 1 year. In 2020, the whole nation changed, the whole world. I think about that after 30 years, the changes that that person has seen versus me. So you have to accept that you're going to have uncomfortable conversations for a good bit of your life. That doesn't mean you can't be frustrated. That doesn't mean that you can't be progressive. That doesn't mean you can't hold people accountable. But that means that you should start to frame your conversation with that knowledge. You should walk in saying, I must expect that in this room, I represent a large swath of people who look like me, whether I agree with them or I don't. And when I wear my hair like this, I potentially could be seen a certain way, right or wrong or indifferent. In no way is it right, but I'm saying you have to start making those assumptions, not to change who you are, but so that you can form how you express yourself. I'll give a quick example. I get this asked all the time. Oh, you got tattoos? And I said, yes, I haven't even got them finished. And the one lady was like, I've never seen a politician with tattoos. And I said, really? Well, now you have. And then she just sat back and I said, just let it sink in though. Now that you've seen a politician with tattoos, do you say to the next politician, why don't you have tattoos? Mm-hmm. So who's the standard? Am I setting the standard? Or are they the standard? And then in her mind, she has to deal with that. Because I'm not going to erase my tattoos. So you have to start to say that. I am a standard, whether you can accept that or not. I'm in this place and in this space as myself. Now you can go to the next person and say, why don't you have tattoos? So that expression and acceptance is uncomfortable, but it's necessary.
Thank you. That's a good point. Let's see. This is the last question I have for you.
Okay.
What do you think dark side means for the community, and especially in the midst of a pandemic?
Man, it's everything. It's where culture and community meets. That's what it is. Dark side is a cultural cup of coffee. It is where you can meet your owners and have a conversation about the sandwiches. You can meet You walk to dark side sometimes. One time there was a guy speaking Arabic to his friend, a lady who was speaking Spanish, and then some Deltas who were from Alabama A&M. Everybody in there was enjoying themselves and the music. And when September came on from Beyonce, they all was rocking. Dark side means so much. It's so simple, but it means so much because all of us, whoever's watching this, even yourself, there's a space where you so comfortable that if I was to videotape you, you'd be embarrassed. That might be when you got your headsets on, you on Call of Duty, you just snipe somebody from across the way on Fortnite. That might be when you with your brothers. That might be when you're on the court. That might be when you're chilling with your family. If I was to videotape how goofy you are and how relaxed you are and how just free you are, you'd be like, hey, chill out, don't post that. That's what you want to create. At Dark Side, everybody being themselves, so comfortable over coffee and good food, they don't even realize it. So Dark Side for a community, it's just a cup of coffee for the culture. At the end of the day, I mean, the coffee good, but it's the space. Nobody feels judged. Nobody feels assuming. And that doesn't mean in any other place and space. Now, if Starbucks is watching, I'm sorry, I'm about to say this. They've created, in my opinion, a metric by which if you go in, you operate by. They don't accept certain people, and they do accept certain people in certain spaces. And they've done a really good job to recoup and work on that. There's an incident in Philadelphia with 2 African-American males who went into Starbucks, were told they weren't allowed to be there. Come to find out, they had paid. The lady made a mistake. But again, the assumption in the establishment is that certain people are to feel comfortable and aren't. It's not for every ownership of Starbucks, it's not from every place, but the name itself. So we want Dark Side to be a place and space that there isn't a doubt. When your friend come into town, you be like, bro, I got to take you by Dark Side. You don't like coffee, don't worry about it. They got other stuff there too. I just want you to go to the place and space. When we open the second establishment, the later part of this year in the bigger event space, we want everybody just to have that attachment of comfort.
Yes. Especially a student like me who's in a school where often feels like there aren't a lot of safe spaces. The creation of places like Dark Side is incredibly important. So thank you for that. Thank you for your team. I don't have any more questions for you. Is there anything else you'd like to, impart on us?
Yeah, man, I'll just say to you and then whoever you show it to, man, stay confident. When I was your age, there was just this assumption that in order to be successful or be a certain place, I had to act a certain way. Now, you should always be respectful, young man. You should always be aware of people and be respectful of who people are. Never press upon people yourself when they don't want to receive you. Don't you ever doubt that you are different for a reason. Don't you ever doubt that you see things and hear things differently. You should not be in trouble for questioning in a respectful manner. If there's an issue that you have, don't complain about it if you've never brought it up. Don't ever be somebody who can write a negative review perfectly but can't give praise. So press every single day of your life from here to whatever point you believe success is, because you're going to be so mad. I'm going to tell you, on my other side, all the dudes that talked the most when I was your age have either hit me up for a job or asked me how to get on. I'm not perfect, but what I did is hustle. Hustle relationships, hustle with people, hustle hard for my own work. I did not make the best grades, but it wasn't a moment in my life I didn't spend it absorbing. The best thing you can become is a sponge, King. If you're not learning a different language, learning where people are from, what they like, absorbing knowledge and relationship, it's gonna pass you by. And people like Joe, who my brother, he in it with me right now, but he was making $50,000 investments at 21. You know what I mean? You got to think about where that means at 18 he had already made the first 5,000. Mm-hmm. And he talking to a professor who's 60 years old about his investments at 21. Never flaunting. If I showed you Joe, you wouldn't know this man. Was a senior VP over at Huntsville Hospital, portfolio manager in a $200 to $300 million. at 32 years old. The most unassuming person. So, take the blessings that God gave you and hustle, King. That's my advice.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to say, on behalf of the James Clemens Black Student Union and the Youth Advocates for Equality, we really appreciate the time, especially sitting down with me, just answering some questions. It means more than you know for a lot of people out there. And I can't wait to see what you do in the future, how you continue to inspire in our community, and I can't wait to see what our peers do after you imparting all of your wisdom on us. So thank you for that.
Thank you to not only Mr. Keith, but to all of our speakers and participants who made this event possible. On behalf of the James Clemens Youth Advocates for Equality and Black Student Union, we thank you for watching.